The underground poker room is a cathedral of sin. Green felt stretches across 8 tables, each one drowning in overhead light so harsh it turns everyone's skin the color of old ivory. Cigar smoke hangs so thick in the air that breathing feels like swallowing wool. Armed guards stand at every door, their suits perfectly tailored, their eyes perfectly hollow. The room smells like money and ash and the particular kind of fear that only very dangerous men can create. Giovanni Moreno sits at the center table, his shoulders broad enough to block out the light behind him. He is 47 years old but carries the weight of someone much older. His dark hair is threaded with silver at the temples. A scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, a thin white line that catches the light when he leans forward. He wears a charcoal suit that costs more than most people's annual salaries, the jacket open to reveal a chest of pure muscle and an old gold watch on his left wrist that has never left his body in 23 years. His hands move across the felt with the deliberation of a general moving chess pieces across a battlefield. Men have died because of decisions made in this room. Men will die again. But tonight, something is wrong. His 8-year-old son Marco sits beside him, small and dark-haired and wearing a miniature suit that matches his father's exactly. The boy holds a juice box in one hand, his eyes following the cards with the careful attention of someone trying very hard to understand a world that does not yet belong to him. Giovanni's hand rests on the boy's shoulder, protective and absolute. This is the only softness anyone in San Francisco has ever seen from the Kingpin. This is the only crack in the fortress. Carlo and Franco stand behind him, lieutenants with 15 years of service each, their faces carved from stone. They do not smile. They do not look at the other players. They look at Giovanni, always at Giovanni, because where he moves is where danger lives. The private doctor hired for $3 million per year stands in the corner with a medical bag the size of a briefcase, watching the room like a man who knows he might be needed at any second. He has learned never to look away. Marco takes a sip of his juice box. A small sound, nothing more than the plastic crumpling in his small fist. Then his body goes rigid. The juice box falls. His small fingers curl like talons. His mouth opens but no sound comes out, which is somehow worse than screaming would be. His head tilts back at an angle that no child's head should tilt. His eyes roll white. Giovanni's hands are on him in half a second. Carlo is already moving toward the doctor. Franco is reaching for his phone. But the boy's body is convulsing now, his back arching off the leather chair, his small frame seized by something invisible and absolute. Silence swallows the room like the lid of a coffin being sealed. Giovanni's roar when it comes is not human. It is something older and rawer, a sound like an animal watching its child burn. His hands grip Marco's shoulders. His face goes white. The most dangerous man in San Francisco, the Kingpin who signs death warrants before breakfast, drops to his knees and presses his palms to his son's chest as if he could push the seizure out through sheer will and money and power. But power cannot stop a child's body from breaking. The doctor stammers something incoherent about calling an ambulance. One of the other poker players stands slowly and excuses himself toward the nearest exit. No one moves toward Giovanni. No one speaks. The room holds its breath. Then the door flies open. Lena Wells stands in the doorway, still wearing her second-hand sweater with the hole in the left shoulder, her dark hair pulled back in a braid that is coming loose. She is 26 years old but looks like someone who has already lived 2 lifetimes. Her face is sharp with the particular exhaustion that comes from surviving on almost nothing. She is not supposed to be here. The underground poker room is no place for a nanny. But she heard the sound. She heard Giovanni's voice, something in it that made her forget every rule about staying invisible. She shoves past the frozen doctor without ceremony or hesitation. How long has he been seizing? Her voice is barely above a whisper but cuts through the room like a blade. Giovanni stares at her for half a second, his eyes the color of a storm at midnight. I do not know. 30 seconds. Maybe a minute. Lena drops to her knees beside the boy. Her hands move with the precision of someone who has trained for this. She tilts Marco's head to the side. She counts compressions out loud in a steady rhythm, her voice the only sound in the room besides the boy's ragged breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep breathing, Marco. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are here. You are safe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her hands press against his small chest. Her voice does not shake even though everything else in her is trembling. She has done this before, on a September afternoon that she does not allow herself to remember, with a child whose name she has buried so deep inside herself that speaking it aloud would crack her entirely. 30 seconds pass. Then a minute. Then 2. Marco's body begins to release. The rigid tension starts to drain. His eyes flutter. His breathing slows and becomes less a gasping desperation and more something approaching normal. Giovanni watches her hands on his son's chest. He watches her face, which is focused and professional and bearing the weight of something he cannot name. He watches the way she speaks to Marco like he is a human being instead of a broken thing, like she has already decided with absolute certainty that he will be okay. Stay with me, Marco. That is right. Breathing. You are doing so well. The door explodes inward. 3 gunmen burst through wearing black tactical gear, their weapons already raised. The sound of the first shot cracks across the room like thunder. The second follows half a second later. The third, fourth, and fifth come so fast they blur into a single sustained roar. Carlo returns fire. Franco is already in motion, pulling his weapon, the room transforming in the space of a breath from a place of cards and money into a war zone. Lena does not hesitate. She does not think. She throws her body over Marco's small frame, shielding him completely as bullets tear through the air where she was standing a second before. The first bullet catches her shoulder, the impact spinning her slightly. The second hits her middle back. The third tears through her ribs. The fourth and fifth follow in rapid succession, each impact a white-hot explosion of pain that she does not allow herself to acknowledge because Marco is underneath her and Marco is alive, and that is the only calculation that matters. Giovanni's roar of fury shakes the building. His men return fire with the precision of professionals, and the gunmen drop one by one like puppets with their strings cut. The room fills with the smell of gunpowder and blood and the sharp metallic tang of brass casings hitting marble. Silence returns as suddenly as it came. Lena's body is still, draped over the boy. Blood spreads across her second-hand sweater. She does not move. Her eyes are still open, still watching Marco's face, making sure he keeps breathing. Giovanni reaches her in 2 strides and pulls her back, his hands trembling for the first time in someone else's presence. Blood covers his palms. Blood covers Marco's small suit jacket. Doctor. His voice is thunder. Now. But what Giovanni does not know was that in this moment, kneeling in the blood of a woman he has known for exactly 3 seconds, something in his chest would begin to change. The debt she created tonight would become his obsession. The 5 bullets that entered her body would bind her to him more completely than any contract ever could. He did not know that sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone you love and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. Because we are about to go back to the beginning, to 3 years before this moment, to a woman who had learned to survive on absolutely nothing. Now let us go back. 3 years earlier, the rain falls on San Francisco like a curse that cannot be erased. November rain. The kind that gets inside your bones and stays there for weeks. The streets are dark except where the streetlights cut through the downpour in neat geometric rectangles. The city hums at 3 in the morning with the sound of cars passing, of occasional footsteps, of a silence so complete it feels like being underwater. Lena Wells stands at the edge of the Harrington estate, looking up at the house that has been her home for 3 years. The mansion rises 6 stories into the darkness, all pale stone and dark windows and the kind of wealth that comes from generations of never having to worry about money. Inside that house, Margaret Harrington sleeps in a bed the size of a small apartment. Her children sleep in rooms with ocean views. And Lena sleeps in a converted closet on the 3rd floor, a space that was once a linen storage unit, barely wide enough to fit a single mattress. She carries everything she owns in a single suitcase. 14 hours a day. 3 years of service. 7,295 days of waking before sunrise, of scrubbing other people's children, of pouring her heart into small humans who will never truly be hers. And today, Margaret Harrington informed her that her services were no longer needed. The reason was simple. A lie? The kind of lie that wealthy people tell themselves when they want to destroy someone without feeling guilty about it. Margaret claimed that Lena had stolen a diamond bracelet worth $9,000. Lena had not touched any bracelet. But the accusation was enough. The police were not called. That would have been messy, complicated. Instead, Margaret simply smiled that particular smile that wealthy people have and told Lena she had 2 hours to collect her things and leave. No final paycheck. No severance. No reference. Lena stands in the November rain with everything she owns in one suitcase and exactly $17 in her pocket. $17. The number plays over and over in her mind like a prayer that will not be answered. $17 to last her until she finds another job. $17 to eat on until another employer agrees to hire her. $17 standing between her and the complete and total absence of everything. She walks toward the street where her car is parked. A 2004 Honda Civic with a check engine light that has been on for 6 months. She opens the door and throws her suitcase into the back seat. The smell inside the car is stale and particular, the smell of driving hour after hour with no destination. She has spent more nights sleeping in this car than she cares to count. She turns the key. Nothing happens. She turns it again. The engine turns over, almost catches, then dies. The dashboard lights flicker and go dark. She sits in the silence of the broken car with her $17 and her suitcase and her history of surviving on almost nothing and wonders with a clarity that is almost peaceful whether this is the moment when she finally runs out of options. She tries the key one more time. The engine makes a sound like a dying animal and does not start. Somewhere above her, the November rain falls like the lid of a coffin being sealed. The alarm on Lena Wells' phone screams at 5:27 in the morning, and she does not move. She lies there in the darkness of the converted closet, listening to the sound of her own breathing, knowing that in exactly 13 minutes Margaret Harrington will begin demanding things. Coffee made a specific way. Emma's uniform pressed without wrinkles. Toast cut into triangles, not squares, because Emma is 6 years old and has opinions about geometry. Lena sits up slowly. Her back cracks. The mattress on the floor is thin, the kind that remembers every position her body takes, and she has been in this same position for 3 years now. The closet is 6 feet wide at its widest point. A tension rod holds her clothes, 3 work dresses, 2 pairs of pants, the black shirt she wears to the hotel. Everything she owns fits inside this space the size of a coffin standing upright. She stands and her knees protest. 29 years old but feeling decades older. Brown hair pulled back with a rubber band that has lost its elasticity. Eyes the color of wet concrete, red around the edges from the night shift she worked until 2 in the morning, the morning shift that started at 6. She has not slept more than 4 hours in a single stretch in longer than she can remember. The hallway outside the closet is cream-colored and expensive. The Harrington house smells like money, like lemon polish and fresh flowers and the particular silence that comes from having more space than you need. Lena walks to the kitchen where Margaret Harrington sits at the marble island with her phone in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. Margaret is 47 years old but has paid enough money to look 35. Her hair is highlighted blonde. Her nails are manicured. She is wearing a silk robe that costs more than Lena's monthly rent. The coffee is cold, Margaret says without looking up from her phone. I just made it, Lena says. I do not care. Make it again. Lena pours the coffee down the sink and begins again. Her hands move through the motions. Scoop, water, wait, pour. The kitchen window looks out onto a garden that a professional landscaper maintains 3 times a week. Somewhere in this house, Emma is still asleep in a room with a canopy bed and shelves full of toys that she plays with for 5 minutes before moving to different toys. Margaret does not look at Lena as she takes the new cup. She simply reaches out her hand like a person feeding a dog. Emma needs her uniform pressed. And her lunch today should be organic chicken, not the regular kind. She is sensitive. Yes, Mrs. Harrington. And do not let her eat snacks before dinner. Last week she was eating crackers at 3 in the afternoon. It is not appropriate. Yes, Mrs. Harrington. Margaret finally glances at her. It is the kind of look a person gives to a piece of furniture that is slightly out of place. Your hair looks messy. Try to keep yourself presentable. You are around Emma all day. Lena does not respond. Responding creates conversation, and conversation creates the illusion of relationship, and Margaret Harrington does not want a relationship with the person who sleeps in her closet. She wants service. She wants obedience. She wants Lena to move through the house like a shadow, quiet and faithful and invisible. By 7:15, Emma comes down the stairs wearing her school uniform and asking questions the way 6-year-olds do. Why do you sleep in the small room? Emma asks this while Lena braids her hair. Because I like small rooms, Lena says, which is a lie, but the kind of lie that is kinder than the truth. Mommy says you are lucky to have any room at all. Lena's hands pause on Emma's hair for just a moment. Your mommy is a very smart woman. Do you like living with us? I like taking care of you. That is not what I asked, Emma says. She is 6 and she sees things clearly, the way children do before the world teaches them to look away. Margaret's voice carries from somewhere in the house. Emma. Breakfast. Lena finishes the braid. Emma's hair is the color of honey. She has her mother's face but something else in her eyes, something that is still soft, still open. Lena wonders sometimes what happens to little girls. What turns them into people like Margaret? The day stretches out. 14 hours. School drop-off at 8:30. Work at the Harrington house from 9 to 5. Pick up at 3, but Margaret does not come home until 6, so Lena and Emma sit in the living room that they are not allowed to use and Emma does her homework while Lena watches. At 5:15, there is a moment where Emma shows Lena a drawing she made at school. Colored pencils on white paper. A figure with yellow hair and a figure with brown hair holding hands. The sky is blue in the drawing. The sun is yellow. Everything is simple and good. That is you and me, Emma says. I am the one with yellow hair. Lena looks at the picture. Her throat tightens. It is beautiful. I am going to give it to Mommy, Emma says. Margaret comes home at 6:02 and Emma runs to her with the drawing. Margaret glances at it while checking her messages. That is nice, sweetie. We will put it on the fridge. The drawing does not go on the fridge. Lena finds it later, balled up in the trash can, and she carefully unfolds it and puts it in her pocket where it stays. At 6:30, Margaret's dinner is prepared. Grilled salmon, asparagus, risotto that takes 35 minutes to make correctly. Emma eats chicken nuggets that Margaret purchased from somewhere that sells organic chicken nuggets. Lena eats what is left, which is usually very little. Tonight it is 1 asparagus spear and the burnt corner of the risotto. By 8 p.m., Emma is asleep and Lena is in her closet, changing into the black shirt and pants that constitute her uniform at the Grandview Hotel downtown. The hotel is 6 miles away. The drive takes 23 minutes if traffic cooperates and 40 if it does not. She drives a 2004 Honda Civic that has been dying slowly for the past 2 years. The check engine light has been on so long that Lena has stopped noticing it. The Grandview Hotel sits in the financial district. It is not fancy. It is the kind of hotel where business travelers sleep and where people conduct affairs and where nobody asks questions about anything. Lena works the front desk from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. 3 nights a week. $240 a week if she works all 3 nights, which she does because she has to. At 8:58 p.m., she parks in the employee lot and sits for a moment. Her hands are shaking slightly. She has now been awake for 16 hours and she will not sleep until tomorrow night, and that knowledge sits in her chest like a stone. She pulls out her phone and looks at the email that came this morning. It is from the debt collection agency. The subject line reads "Final Notice." She opens it. The amount is circled in red. $150,000. Due in 2 weeks. 3 years ago, her mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The treatment cost $70,000. Insurance covered half of it. Lena borrowed money from her mother's best friend to cover the rest. She has been paying it back at $500 a month for 3 years. In January, the agency decided that her mother's estate owed them money that Lena's mother never actually borrowed. They added a penalty. Then they added interest on the penalty. Then they added a fee for the letter. Now the amount is $150,000 and somehow Lena is responsible. She puts the letter back in her pocket. It is folded and creased from being folded and unfolded so many times. The front desk of the Grandview Hotel is a black marble counter. Behind it, Lena checks in guests and answers phones and smiles when required. Around 10:45 p.m., Anthony Marchetti emerges from his office. He is the manager. He is mid-40s with slicked-back dark hair and a gold watch and the kind of smile that makes her want to move to another room. He approaches the desk and leans against it casually, the way men do when they are about to say something that will make a woman uncomfortable. "Good evening, Lena." "Good evening, Mr. Marchetti. How are you tonight?" "Fine, thank you." "You seem tired." "It has been a long day." He reaches over and touches her shoulder. It is not a gentle touch. It is the kind of touch that marks territory. "You should smile more. You are prettier when you smile." She does not respond. Responding encourages him. She looks at the computer screen in front of her and pretends to be very busy. "There is a convention next week," he continues. "Sales managers from 3 states. They will all want to party in their rooms. I am giving that responsibility to you. Late nights, private service. You will make excellent tips." "I can work the late nights," Lena says carefully. "But I do not provide private room service." His hand tightens on her shoulder. "You will do what I tell you to do, or you will not work here. And if you do not work here, you will not be able to work anywhere in this city. I know people. I have made calls. You understand?" "Yes, Mr. Marchetti." He removes his hand. He reaches down and takes the tip jar from beside the register, the jar where guests place their spare change. It is full. Maybe $83. "I am taking this for the staff fund," he says. "For supplies." "There is no staff fund. There are no supplies." He walks back to his office with the jar and Lena stands very still. At 1 a.m., her shift ends. She drives home in the dark. The streets are empty. The rain that has been threatening all day finally begins to fall, soft at first and then harder. By the time she reaches the Harrington house, it is coming down like her accusation. She parks in the circular driveway and sits in her car with the engine off. The rain drums on the roof. She reaches into her pocket and removes her wallet. She has $17.32. Rent is due next week. Emma's birthday is in 3 weeks and Lena has promised to buy her a gift. The letter in her other pocket burns like a brand. She gets out of the car and walks to the servants' entrance. The house is dark. Margaret sleeps upstairs in a room with a chandelier. Emma sleeps in her canopy bed. And Lena walks to her closet, removes her uniform, hangs it carefully, and lies down on her thin mattress in the darkness. The rain outside sounds like a timer counting down. Tick. 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 2 weeks until the debt becomes something she cannot run from anymore. 2 weeks until everything changes in a way she cannot yet imagine. The rain fell like an accusation on the November night, and Lena Wells stood in the employee parking lot of the Grand View Hotel with $17 in her wallet and the taste of blood in her mouth. Anthony Marchetti's footsteps echoed across the wet asphalt behind her. She heard them before she saw him, measured, unhurried, the sound of a man who believed himself untouchable. The neon from the hotel sign bled red across his face, and his jaw was already tight with something that looked like hunger. "You do not walk away from me," he said. His voice was low, almost conversational, which made it worse. Lena kept moving toward her car. The rain hammered down, cold enough to see her breath, and her uniform was already soaked through. "I am going home, Mr. Marchetti. My shift ended." "Your shift ends when I say it ends." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh above her elbow. The grip was casual, like he was taking her by the hand to dance. "We need to discuss your schedule. Come back inside." "No." The word came out smaller than she intended, barely a whisper against the storm. He spun her around, and for a moment they stood face to face between the rows of parked cars. His cologne, expensive, sharp, suffocating, mixed with the smell of rain and exhaust. "What did you say?" "I said no." This time her voice held steady, though every muscle in her body was screaming at her to take it back, to apologize, to smile and follow him inside like an obedient dog. His hand came up fast. The first blow caught her across the left side of her face, snapping her head backward. Stars burst behind her eyes. The second followed before she could brace herself, his wedding ring splitting the skin above her eyebrow, and she tasted blood, real blood, not the phantom kind fear produces. Instinct took over. She clawed at his neck, her fingernails raking across his skin, and he screamed, actually screamed, before his hands wrapped around her throat. His thumbs pressed into her windpipe with the weight of his entire body behind them. The rain continued its relentless rhythm against the pavement. She could not breathe. She could not scream. The pressure built behind her eyes like water behind a dam, and the world began to darken at the edges, shrinking down to the single point of his face above hers, his teeth bared, his eyes empty of anything resembling humanity. "Nobody tells me no," he hissed. "Nobody." Then nothing. When she woke, she was on the ground. The rain soaked through her clothes and into her bones. Her throat burned like fire. One eye had already begun to swell shut, and when she pressed her fingers to her neck, she felt the deep purple bruises forming, the exact shape of his hands, a map of violation marked across her skin like a brand. She was alone. The parking lot stretched empty in both directions. Her car sat 15 feet away, and she crawled toward it on hands and knees because standing felt impossible. The keys were still in her pocket. She fumbled them into the ignition with fingers that would not stop shaking. The engine turned over once, twice, and then died with a grinding sound that meant nothing good. She tried again. The same grinding. The same death. The timing belt. The mechanic had warned her 3 months ago that it was failing, that she needed to replace it before it gave out completely. She had no money. She had no choices. So she had pretended it would hold. It did not hold. She sat in the driver's seat with her hands on the steering wheel and felt something inside her chest crack like ice under pressure. $17. That was all that remained in her wallet. Her phone had no signal, 3 bars becoming 2 becoming nothing as she climbed out of the car and started walking. The highway stretched ahead, dark and empty, rain coming down like the sky itself was weeping. Headlights appeared periodically, blurring through the downpour, and she held her breath each time, hoping and dreading in equal measure. A truck passed without slowing. A sedan. A delivery van. Her body moved on autopilot, one foot in front of the other, her good eye fixed on some distant point that did not exist. The swelling had almost closed her left eye completely. Her throat felt like she had swallowed glass. Her mind had gone somewhere far away, some quiet place where none of this was happening, where she was not walking alone on the shoulder of a highway with $17 and the clothes on her back and a debt letter in her pocket that demanded $150,000 in 14 days. The headlights came first, 3 pairs, moving in tight formation. Then the engines, deep and powerful, the sound of vehicles that cost more than she would earn in a decade. The convoy slowed. 3 black SUVs with windows tinted so dark they looked like they contained no interior at all, no life, nothing but void. The middle vehicle stopped beside her. A rear door opened. A man's voice cut through the storm, deep and solid like an oath, like something carved into stone. "Get in." She did not move. "Now," the voice said. Not cruel. Simply final. She got in. The leather seats were warm, heated from the inside, and she began to shake violently as her body registered the shift from cold to heat. The man beside her did not touch her. He simply looked at her injuries for 4 seconds, an eternity compressed into moments, and then spoke into a phone with the clipped authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Medical facility. Now." The man driving, Carlo, and the man in the passenger seat, Franco, did not speak. They did not ask questions. The rain drummed on the roof as the convoy moved through the sleeping city, and Lena sat in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap, unable to process what was happening, only knowing that she had moved from one form of helplessness to another, and there was no way to know if this represented escape or something far worse. The medical facility occupied 3 floors of a building in the financial district, unmarked and private, the kind of place that existed only for people with enough money and power to make normal medical infrastructure irrelevant. A doctor appeared within minutes, an older woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen worse things than a beaten young woman. She did not ask about police or incident reports. 7 stitches closed the wound above Lena's eye. Ice reduced the swelling. An examination of her throat revealed deep bruising but no permanent damage. Throughout it all, the man who had pulled her from the highway, Giovanni Marino, though she did not yet know his name, stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and waited. When the doctor finished, Giovanni said simply, "Fix everything." He did not mean the visible injuries. He meant something larger, something that transcended stitches and ice. Then he walked away. She woke 3 days later in a guest room that could have fit her entire apartment inside it. The bed was king-sized, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked San Francisco's financial district, the buildings gleaming in weak November sunlight. She had no memory of arriving here or changing into the silk nightgown she now wore. A woman named Rosa brought breakfast, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like something imported from somewhere far away. Rosa was maybe 50, with the careful, neutral expression of someone who had learned not to see things in this house. "Mr. Marino says you stay until you are well," Rosa said. "No charge. No questions. Anything you need, you ask." On the nightstand sat an envelope. Inside, $5,000 in cash, more money than Lena had ever held in her life. The note was written in neat, precise handwriting, "For whatever you need. No strings. GM." She found him 3 days after that, standing in a study lined with leather-bound books. The desk was mahogany, the kind of wood that grew in forests that no longer existed. Giovanni Marino was 43 years old, with salt and pepper hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved by someone who understood both cruelty and consequence. A 3-piece charcoal suit, expensive beyond reason. A gold watch that caught the light. Scars running in subtle lines across his left temple. "Why are you helping me?" Lena asked. He turned slowly. "Because you needed help." "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer I have." He studied her face, and she could see him cataloguing the remaining bruises, the way her left eye still did not open fully. "I helped you because you needed help. That is enough." She shook her head. "Nothing is free. Everyone wants something. What do you want?" "I want you to accept that sometimes people do things without ulterior motives." His voice did not change. He was not angry. He was simply stating a fact, the way he might comment on the weather. I know this is difficult for you to believe. I imagine you have learned to expect cruelty instead of kindness. But you are going to have to learn to trust again, or this will never get better. I do not trust easily. Then we will be patient, he said. The next morning, Giovanni took her to a room on the 3rd floor. He had not opened the door in 6 years. The walls were pale yellow, the color of new sunlight, and every surface held the artifacts of a life that had never been lived. A crib with linen still in place, never washed. A mobile above it, tiny wooden animals suspended in permanent rotation toward nothing. Books stacked on shelves. Stuffed animals arranged in perfect order on the changing table. Sophia, Giovanni said quietly. She would have been 10 years old next March. Lena's breath caught. She said nothing. Sudden infant death. 8 months old. No warning. No reason. Just gone. He did not look at the crib. He could not. My wife followed 6 months later. Maria. She drove her car into the bay on a Tuesday afternoon. Left a note that said, I cannot bear this world without her. He turned to face Lena, and for the first time she saw the full weight of what he carried, not in his body, which remained controlled and still, but in his eyes. The kind of grief that does not fade. It simply learns to stand still. I know what it means to be powerless against the things that destroy you, he said. I have everything, money, power, people who would die for me with a single word. And I could not save her. I could not save either of them. Lena felt something shift in her chest, some wall she had been maintaining begin to crack. My mother, she said quietly. Cancer. I was 17 when she got sick. The treatment was experimental, and it cost $150,000. We did not have it. So I borrowed it. And when she died anyway, her voice cracked like old paint, I was left with the debt and nothing else. She reached into her pocket and withdrew the letter, now crumpled and stained with rain and blood. Final notice, it read in aggressive red text. 14 days remaining before legal action. She showed it to him 3 times, as if repetition might make the number less impossible. Why did you not declare bankruptcy? Giovanni asked. Because it was my mother, Lena said. I owed her more than a clean slate. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I will pay the debt. No. Yes. I will not be owned, she said fiercely. He respected this. She could see it in the way he nodded, the way he stepped back and reconsidered her, not as a victim, but as someone with a spine that could not be broken. Then work for me, he said. I have a son. Marco. 8 years old. For nannies in 2 years because my lifestyle makes trust impossible. I will pay you $12,000 a month, plus room and board in the main house. And while you work, you will pay back the debt on whatever schedule you choose. Not from charity. From employment. She accepted. Back at the Harrington house, Margaret's voicemails came in a fury. You ungrateful little thief. You abandoned Emma without notice. I will destroy your references. I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will tell every family from here to Sacramento that you are a liar and a thief. Emma, the 7-year-old girl Lena had raised for 3 years, left a drawing on the kitchen table. A stick figure in yellow, Lena, holding hands with another stick figure in pink, Emma. Underneath, in shaky letters, Emma had written, "Where did Vivi go?" It broke her heart in half. But what Margaret did not realize was that Anthony Marchetti had already discovered where Lena was working, and he had already begun to make plans that would shake Giovanni's world to its foundation. 3 months had passed since Lena Wells walked through the gates of Giovanni Marino's estate. 3 months of Marco's careful trust, of debt payment stacking like small victories, of mornings that no longer tasted like ash. She had saved $4,200. She had sent $2,000 to the debt collector. She had almost begun to believe that broken things could be repaired. The phone call came at 2 in the afternoon. Giovanni's voice carried a weight she had not heard before. "Come to my office. Now." The walk through the house felt like walking through ice water. His office was on the third floor, all dark wood and leather, windows overlooking the city like a general surveying territory he owned. Giovanni stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid beneath his white shirt. When he turned, his face was carved from something harder than stone. "Anthony Marchetti went to Marco's school this morning," he said. "He told the principal he was your estranged husband. He said you were unstable, dangerous, that you had threatened Marco." The room tilted. "That is a lie. I have never." "I know." Giovanni's voice cut like a blade through butter. "I called the principal myself. Made a donation to their renovation fund. The problem disappeared. But Marchetti is not finished." He handed her a paper. Her hand shook as she read it. Margaret Harrington was suing her for theft. A diamond bracelet, $20,000, allegedly stolen before Lena left her employment. The papers had been served that morning at the gate, in front of the groundskeeper, in front of Marco's tutor. The lawsuit had already hit the society pages of the San Francisco Chronicle. "She is lying," Lena whispered. "Yes." Giovanni's hands were fists at his sides. "But lies travel faster than truth in this city. Your name is connected to mine. Every article mentions where you work. Every mention is a target on both of us." That evening, rain began to fall. November rain, the same cold blade that had cut through the night when he found her on the highway. Lena sat on the edge of her bed, a real bed now, in a room that belonged to her, and felt the weight of everything she was about to lose. She thought of Emma's drawing. Where did Vivi go? She thought of Marco's small hand finding hers under the dinner table last week, a gesture so fragile it felt like trust being handed to her in pieces. She thought of the life she had almost stolen for herself. The decision came at midnight. She packed a bag with the efficiency of someone who had learned to leave quickly. 2 pairs of jeans. 3 shirts. Her mother's wedding ring, still too large for her finger. The drawing Emma had made. The November rain fell harder as she descended the stairs. Each step was a goodbye. The foyer, where Marco had shown her his science project. The kitchen, where Giovanni had made coffee for her at 3 in the morning when she could not sleep. The sitting room, where for the first time in her adult life she had sat beside someone and felt safe. She walked out into the driveway. The rain was so cold it felt like punishment. She could taste it, metallic and clean, mixing with the salt of tears she did not remember shedding. Her throat ached where Anthony's hands had been months before, a permanent echo of violence she had never escaped. She held the bag against her chest and walked toward the gate. 1 step. Then another. Then Marco's bedroom light flickered on the 2nd floor. She stopped. In the window, she saw his silhouette, small, watching, waiting. One boy. 8 years old. Who had chosen to trust her when every adult around him taught him that trust was dangerous. Lena set the bag down on the wet concrete. She walked back inside. Giovanni was waiting in the foyer. He already knew. Of course he knew. "I will not let you destroy yourself for me," she said, her voice shattered like glass. "Your business, your reputation, Marco. You think you are the one being destroyed." His voice came low and dangerous. Margaret and Marchetti coordinated this. They planned it. They want to drag you back into poverty where they can control you. Where Marchetti can find you again. This is not about me. This is about what they believe they can do to you because you dared to escape. He made 1 phone call. Within an hour, Carlo arrived. Then Franco. Then 6 more men, all wearing the same expression of quiet purpose. Giovanni spoke to them in Italian, rapid and controlled. She heard only 2 words clearly: take him. At 3:47 in the morning, 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the Grandview Hotel like shadows that had learned to walk. They moved with the precision of men who had done this before, men who knew the layout of every corridor, every exit, every room where a small manager with violent hands kept his office. Anthony Marchetti was counting stolen tip money when Carlo dragged him from his chair by his collar. He screamed. High-pitched and desperate, a sound like an animal realizing it had never been safe at all. "I will give it back. I will disappear. Please. Please, I have a daughter, I have." Giovanni appeared in the doorway. His face was a mask carved from stone and older than time. Franco stepped forward. His voice was quiet, which made it worse. "We are not killing you. That would be too easy. Too quick. Too merciful." They handed Marchetti to the Castelliano family, Giovanni's rivals, men who had been waiting for leverage, for something they could use. The screaming lasted until the elevator doors closed. By morning, Marchetti's apartment was empty. His car abandoned in long-term parking at San Francisco International. His official story, released through careful channels, embezzlement charges, fled the country, wanted for questioning by the FBI. He was never seen again. Margaret Harrington's destruction took longer. It required precision. Giovanni's legal team moved like surgeons through her life, cutting away each lie until the truth underneath was exposed. The bracelet never existed. Security footage from the Harrington mansion proved it clearly. But the investigation revealed her real crimes, the one she had buried under charities and galas and carefully maintained social standing. Tax fraud stretching back 7 years. Embezzlement from her husband's company. Money laundering through her foundation. The FBI arrived at dawn. News cameras caught her arrest on every channel. She was screaming as they placed the handcuffs on her wrists, screaming Lena's name like a curse, like if she could just make this girl's name poison enough, she could survive this. She could not. Her husband filed for divorce within a week. Her sentencing came 3 months later, 40 years federal prison. Her social standing, constructed over decades, evaporated in 2 weeks. The friends who had championed her foundation disappeared like fog. Emma was placed with her father's family. Months later, a letter arrived for Lena. Inside, a drawing in a child's careful hand. 2 stick figures playing with blocks. Underneath, in letters that were growing larger and more confident, "I miss you." Lena kept it on her nightstand. 2 weeks after Margaret's arrest, Giovanni held his poker game. The underground room thick with cigar smoke and the green felt of impossible stakes. Marco had asked to come, wanted to see what his father did in this room that was always closed to him. Giovanni had agreed, and Lena accompanied them down the stone stairs. The game was tense. A rival family testing boundaries, making small moves, feeling for weakness. Then Marco began to choke. His face went pale. His hand clutched at his throat. Giovanni lifted him, and Lena saw it immediately: peanuts. Someone had put peanuts in the appetizers. Marco was allergic. Severely allergic. Everything moved in slow motion. Giovanni's hand shook as he reached for his phone. His voice cracked, "Get the ambulance. Now." But the rival family's man pulled a gun. The sound was wrong. Too loud. Too final. Lena moved. She did not think. She did not calculate. She simply moved, her body stepping in front of the trajectory, and the first bullet hit her shoulder. Then her ribs. Then her hip. 5 shots. 5 separate moments of fire and breaking. Giovanni's men eliminated the threat in seconds. Carlo caught her as she fell. Franco was already calling the ambulance, his voice steady even as his hand shook. She woke 3 days later in a private hospital room. Machines breathing for her. Tubes carrying medicine and blood. Giovanni was sitting beside her bed. He had not left. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, his expensive suit wrinkled beyond recognition, 2 days of stubble darkening his jaw. When she moved, his hand found hers immediately. "You took 5 bullets," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. For my son. For me. He is my son too, Lena said. The words tasted like truth. Giovanni brought her hand to his face. His shoulders shook. She had never seen a man like him, powerful, dangerous, commanding, break open like this. His men were not present. Only her. Only this moment of a kingpin reduced to a man terrified of losing someone he loved. I thought I had lost you, he said. The rain fell outside her window, November rain, cold and clean and full of endings and beginnings both. Somewhere in this city, Emma was drawing pictures of a woman named Vivi. Somewhere else, Margaret Harrington was in a federal prison cell understanding that cruelty had consequences. But here, in this room, in this moment, was only Giovanni and Lena and the knowledge that sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. The machines beeped like a metronome counting seconds, and Giovanni Marino sat motionless in the hospital chair, his $5,000 suit hanging loose on a frame that had not eaten in 72 hours. His hands were scarred from decades of violence, yet they trembled as he watched the woman breathing through a tube, her shoulder wrapped in gauze that would need changing, her ribs wrapped in tape that would take weeks to heal, 5 bullets having carved through her body like a sculptor's chisel reshaping stone. Marco stood in the doorway, his 8-year-old frame filling with confusion. He did not understand why Lena had moved in front of him. He did not understand why the loud sounds had happened or why the red had come. He only understood that she had been there, and then she was on the ground, and then these machines, and now this silence that felt like the whole world holding its breath. Giovanni's phone buzzed. 16 messages. His empire did not run itself. There were territories to manage, shipments to redirect, the network of men and money that had taken him 23 years to build. Every second he sat here was a second that could be exploited. Every moment of his attention on this hospital room was a moment his enemies might see weakness. He did not move. Carlo appeared in the hallway, his weathered face creased with concern. In 15 years of working for Giovanni Marino, he had witnessed the man orchestrate the dismantling of rival families with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. He had seen him sit across from federal prosecutors and walk out untouched. He had watched him bury his daughter in a cemetery on a Tuesday and return to his office on Wednesday without shedding a single tear. But this, Carlo recognized something he had never seen before. It was not weakness. It was something far more dangerous. It was change. The situation is contained, Carlo said quietly, standing in the doorway where Marco could not hear. The rival family shooter is already in the bay. 3 of our people were hit, but they will survive. Marchetti's operation in North Beach has been shut down. Margaret Harrington's accounts are frozen pending investigation. Giovanni did not respond. He kept his eyes on Lena's face. The hospital is secure, Carlo continued. 6 men on rotation. No one gets in or out without our knowledge. The doctors have been paid. Everything is handled. Call Franco, Giovanni said. His voice was the sound of stone grinding against stone. Tell him to find whoever gave the order. I want to know who authorized this. I want to know their family structure, their financial accounts, their weaknesses. I want to know what they eat for breakfast and where they sleep at night. Already in motion, Carlo said. Franco is. And Marco, Giovanni interrupted. I want someone with him. Someone he trusts. Not security. Someone who can sit with him and make him feel safe. Who is he asking for? Carlo hesitated. He keeps saying her name. Lena. He thinks she was playing a game with him. He thinks she will wake up and tell him the rules. The machines continued their rhythm. Outside the window, San Francisco spread below them like a kingdom of glass and steel, and somewhere in those streets, people were going about their ordinary lives, unaware that the underground geography of the city had shifted, that the balance of power had tipped, that a homeless woman had taken 5 bullets and changed the constellation of everything. Giovanni finally moved. He reached out and took Lena's hand with a gentleness that Carlo had never seen from him, as if touching her with the same pressure he used with the rest of the world might break her into pieces. His thumb traced the inside of her wrist where the scars from Anthony Marchetti's grip still marked her skin like a permanent indictment of what men could do to women they decided were disposable. "Stay with her," Giovanni said to Carlo. "I need to handle something." "Where are you going?" Carlo asked. Giovanni stood, and the transformation was instant. The vulnerability collapsed inward. The Kingpin reassembled himself like a weapon being loaded. "I am going to remind everyone in this city why they chose fear over ambition." He walked out without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor with a sound like thunder moving through distant mountains. What happened in the next 48 hours became the kind of legend that was whispered in certain rooms, in certain buildings, told in certain ways that always started with, "You remember when Giovanni Marino found out about the girl?" The raids happened at night. 12 men dressed in black moved like ghosts through the North Beach warehouse where Anthony Marchetti had been running his operation. The money was seized, $200,000 in cash, enough to destroy his network, enough to ensure that his suppliers would cut him loose, enough to ensure that he would spend the next 5 years in federal prison watching his empire dissolve into dust and regret. But that was not the worst part for Marchetti. The worst part was that Giovanni released the footage. Security camera footage from the hotel. Footage of Marchetti with his hands around Lena's throat. Footage from 100 other nights with 100 other women who had worked in that hotel and said no and been answered with violence. The footage spread like a contagion. Within 6 hours, it had been viewed 3 million times. News outlets that had never questioned Marchetti's legitimacy suddenly discovered they had archived stories from women he had assaulted. The prosecutor who had looked the other way received an anonymous package containing financial records suggesting his own involvement. By the time sunrise broke over San Francisco on the third day, Anthony Marchetti was no longer a man with power. He was a man in a cell, awaiting trial for sexual assault and racketeering, his name etched into the digital permanent record in a way that ensured no one would ever hire him, trust him, or believe him again. Margaret Harrington's downfall was quieter but more complete. The paperwork was beautiful in its precision. Giovanni's lawyers had spent the past months documenting every financial transaction in which Margaret had participated. Every payment made to Marchetti. Every wire transfer. Every conversation recorded at the gala where she had discussed in detail how a poor nanny could be handled if she became a problem. The evidence was delivered simultaneously to federal prosecutors, the IRS, and 3 journalists at the Times. By Friday, Margaret Harrington was being escorted out of her mansion by federal agents. The news crews showed her face, shocked and disintegrating, her carefully constructed reputation collapsing in real time. The country club board rescinded her membership. The charities removed her name from their donor lists. Her own daughter issued a statement, "I no longer claim her as family." 6 weeks after the shooting, Lena stood in front of a mirror in a room that was not a converted closet. The apartment was modest but entirely hers. The rent was paid 3 months in advance from an account that Giovanni had insisted on opening for her. She had resisted, but he had said something that silenced her argument, "You saved my son's life. You saved mine. This is not charity. This is the smallest possible acknowledgement of a debt that can never be repaid." The scars were still red. They would fade, the surgeon said, but they would never disappear completely. 5 separate wounds, each one a line drawn across her skin that would remind her forever of the moment she chose someone else's life over her own safety. She wore a dress, actually a dress, not work clothes or borrowed things, and she looked at herself and barely recognized the person looking back. The knock came at 7 in the evening. Giovanni stood in her doorway holding flowers and wearing an expression of such uncertainty that for a moment she forgot he was the most dangerous man in San Francisco. "I was not sure if flowers were appropriate," he said. "I have not done this in a very long time." "Done what?" she asked, though she knew. "Courted someone as an equal," he said. "Courted someone with the knowledge that if they chose to walk away, they could, and I would have no power to prevent it. It is terrifying. I do not enjoy it. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised both of them. "Come in," she said. "Tell me about your day." He told her about the dock shipments, about a new protection agreement with the Russians, about how his accountant was suggesting he diversify into legitimate businesses because 70% of his money was now legal enough that the government had stopped caring about the source. He told her about Marco asking when Lena would come back to the house, and Lena said, "I never left. I just moved out for a little while." "Why?" Giovanni asked. "Because I needed to know I could survive without you," Lena said. "Because I needed to know I was choosing you, not just accepting your rescue." Giovanni nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I am still choosing you," she said. "But it feels different. It feels like a choice between equals." He reached across the table and took her hand. In the lamplight, his scars looked like maps of a country she was learning to navigate. "I am in love with you," he said simply. "I have been since the night you told me you would not be owned by Margaret Harrington or Anthony Marchetti or any man in this city. That will to survive, that refusal to disappear, it brought me back from the dead." She did not cry. Her tears had been exhausted long ago on Greyhound buses and in converted closets and in the rain on the side of the highway. Instead, she said, "I know. I have been waiting for you to be ready to say it." 3 months later, they stood in the nursery of Giovanni's house. The walls were still yellow, the crib still assembled, but the dust was gone. Boxes were stacked around them, Sophia's stuffed animals wrapped carefully in tissue paper, being preserved but no longer displayed like relics in a shrine. Marco stood in the doorway with a grin that split his whole face. "Finally," he said. "I have been waiting forever." Lena was in the process of becoming a mother, though she refused the word until Marco chose to give it to her. She was also attending night classes to become a counselor. She was also working with a non-profit that served domestic violence survivors. She was also learning that a life could be rebuilt not out of rescue, but out of choice. The rain fell outside, November rain, just like it had fallen on the night she stood with $17 in her pocket on a rain-soaked highway, believing her life was over. She had been wrong. It was just beginning. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and the power of one courageous act, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to remember that their life can change in a single moment. Subscribe to this channel because tomorrow we have another story of love, power, and redemption you will not want to miss. Drop a comment telling us, would you take a bullet for someone you barely knew? We will see you in the next one. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.